Welcome everyone who's there on the webinar right now, and thanks for joining in. The agenda for today is to discuss some of the assumptions, some of the roadblocks that some small scale business owners typically face, right? And I have been interacting with many of them in the last few months, and these five are not exhaustive, I would say, but these are the top five for sure, right? And uh, for each owner which I have discussed these with, they face some of this in some degree or the other. For some, number one becomes the most important. For some, number five is what blocks their mental capacity to kind of grow. But primarily, the idea or the common thread that I've seen is that for them to be able to take their businesses to the next level, these five become problems or issues that need to be solved for, right? As I said, the gravity could be different. Secondly, I've also experienced this across different industries, right? So, for example, off late, I've been working a lot with a retail industry business where a lot of fashion entrepreneurs are what I'm right now dealing with. And for them, for example, number three, which is when we discuss, you'll see what I'm saying, becomes a very very prominent issue, right? Which is more about inventory and cost control, right? Uh, However, the way I see that problem, and I'm kind of extrapolating that, is a problem which for a retail business could look like an inventory problem. For another service business, it could look like something else, right? But what is it? I think that is what we will discover. Uh, it is an hour-long session. You are more than welcome to put your questions on the chat, and I will try and answer them or address them maybe during the session or maybe after it. uh, Otherwise we could always connect one on one later. Yeah, so getting into the content, these are the five myths or the five assumptions which I think small time business owners struggle with as far as the growth is concerned. And if these bottlenecks are removed, it can unlock a significant amount of value for small businesses. Let's start with looking at what the opportunity size for small businesses in India may be looking like, right? And there are four pie charts that you see here. If you look at India, India's GDP is contributed to about 35% by the small businesses. Now, that number is about 50% for US, about 55% for Singapore, and about 60% for UK, right? So the first opportunity that lies for small businesses is to just expand their pie. In India, these are larger companies which carry much more weight as far as the economy is concerned, but the contribution of smaller businesses could enhance almost by 10 to 15% if we were to just benchmark with some of the neighboring economies. And they are not the best of the economies, also, mind you, right? UK, for example, or Singapore, for example, they are very close proximities to where we could actually get to in the near future. The second opportunity is, of course, on the average revenue per SME. In India, the average revenue, which is the annual revenue per SME, is about zero point 0.1 to zero point 0.5 million USD, which is at least 3 to 10x as far as the other economies are concerned, right? So there are two clear axes of growth as far as small businesses are concerned. One, we could just increase the share of small businesses in the overall GDP of India. And second, how do we just make each business far more contributing, far more larger than what currently they are? Now, quickly jumping onto a case study of how this could really happen and what would it really mean in the real world scenario, right? Now, let's take this example of Lapino's Pizza. Pizza market is not an easy one. And when this organization, they started their establishment about 10 years back in 2013, it was a very, very tough market because very strongly dominated by Domino's, Pizza Hut. And when you just talk about pizza, the only name that comes to your mind is Domino's, right? Across this international domination in this area of pizzas, how does this organization go ahead and build a revenue of about 1,000 crores, building about 700 different outlets, taking franchise route as the main mode of expansion, and building a profit margins of about 24 to 27%. Now, that's the power of expansion. That's the power of taking that share of this entire pie, right? And the main reason why I'm showing this example to you is that we should not just assume that a category is completely filled, right? There is always room to create that distinction, to create that island for yourselves and be able to grow it very, very significantly. Even if there are large players, which are like Domino's and Pizza Huts, who have very, very deep advertising marketing budgets. But still, a company like Lapinos could have taken a large share. I'll correct myself, maybe not large share, but a sizable share of the business. And in 10 years to grow to about 1,000 crores is a very, very fantastic feat, I would say. And this was done by this gentleman whose name is Sanam Kapoor. He used to be an IT professional at one day in Chandigarh, he decided to go into this business because, from a personal perspective, he was not liking the kind of pizzas he was getting. Right. So, how a personal passion got converted into a sizable business. Right. Now, he did not go with any roadblocks in his head, saying that there is a competition, it's a very already penetrated market, etc., which led to the kind of growth. When we do a lot of assessments at Grey Shoots, and on the left side there are a couple of growth assessment tools that we usually use with our partner companies. One is a growth health check. We do something what we call as growth gymnasium, which is similar to execution gymnasium. And there are certain growth toolkits also that we deploy. There are certain surveys that we do. Now, 90% of all the CEOs, CXOs, founders, owners that we survey, 90% of them say that how do we grow the business is the key thing that makes them awake at night. Right now, that's fantastic, because there is a lot of eagerness to grow. However, the problem being that it is something that worries you, and that's what makes you awake at night. I'm sorry, I just noticed that there is a typo error here, but excuse me for that. uh, but yeah, coming back, when we go deeper into it, we realize that improving sales is the topmost priority, how they want to grow. And the second one being that how do we expand the business as far as the new cities are concerned, right? And then, of course, there are other important parameters that they are more worried about, which is retaining people, marketing, streamlining operations. But primarily, it is sales driven business growth and an expansion across different cities that they think is going to bring a lot of growth to their business, which is one of the big worries that they have. Now, let's get into those five things, which I believe are the summary of what makes the largest roadblocks as far as the growth for a small business is concerned in India. Number one, this I hear a lot, right? And I have heard this from companies who have been 6 months in the operation. I've heard this from companies who are 6 years in the operation. I've heard this from companies who've even been 12, 15 years in the operation, right? Uh, but the simple statement is that why do we need a business plan, right? It is only to be done if we are raising funds, and we're not raising funds. We don't have to show anything to any investor, and anything and everything that is required to execute the business is here, right here in our heads, right? Now, this is the biggest assumption or a myth that any business person could go with if they do not realize the value of a business plan and a well articulated numbers which can take them month on month. Otherwise, what they actually are facing is a phenomenon what we call as uh, something which just comes on a monthly basis, and they just absorb it, right? So there is no plan that you're growing your business with. What a good business plan, and when I say a good business plan, I really also want to demystify this, that it's not that it requires a huge amount of analytical rigor to be able to do this. All it requires is very simple methodical approach to put down your assumptions in numbers and to be able to see what the numbers really tell you, right? If you have a business plan, these are the four questions I want you to ask about your business plan, right? One, Is it a short term business that you're into, or you're on long term one? If you're in a long term business, it is not a hobby, then you should definitely map out how your business is going to run up to at least 3 years from now. Very, very critical. Two, what are the costs that are to be put in business to make it work? Right? Many a times we don't even consider costs such as your own cost. Or if you're running the business from the premise of your own house, it is actually a rent that you might be paying, or there is a rent or the opportunity cost that you're actually salvaging just by working at home. Put all the costs there. It's very, very important. People cost. You may underestimate the number of people that you actually need to be able to run the business. And once you put it all together, is when you realize that what is that missing building block that is not allowing you to kind of catapult your growth forward. Pricing decisions. Once you put this together, you realize that while I'm getting X many number of orders, my revenue is not increasing year on year or a quarter on quarter. And the reason is that I'm not charging my clients or my customers the right amount that I should be charging. So pricing becomes a very glaring insight when you do a business plan. And fourth, just in terms of the number of orders or the number of clients that you need or the number of customers that you need to ramp up your growth cycle, right? So once you put these basics together, you get to know that what the business looks like. And it could be that in the short term the business is not making profits for you, but when you see that 1 year 2 year down the line the business is going to start making profit, that is what gives you the confidence to be able to stay in it. If you just take a month on month approach, it becomes hugely demotivating at times. You just feel that last month also we made profit, made losses. This month also we're not going to make profits. Might as well shut it, right? But what you're not seeing is what the forecast looks like, right? So hugely powerful tool, should not be undermined. Just to give you an example, this company, I think it is one of the pioneer companies where founders and entrepreneurs need to learn from. It had its IPO in 2024, and a lot of controversy was around it, whether the valuation is right, not, what the founders are doing, etc. I'm not going to comment on all of that. The main thing that I look up to these founders is for the way they've executed their business from 2016, where they established it, to 2024, getting it to a valuation of 10,000 crores, building a revenue of 2,200 crores, opening about 700 different outlets across India. And India is not an easy country to penetrate. That's one. Second, the kind of competition in the target segment that they were in, which is filled, absolutely chock a block filled with uh, big, big giants as far as cosmetic industry is concerned. They could make a niche for themselves. They started with the product innovation, but they went on in a very meticulous, planned fashion, and to be able to achieve the goal. And I know I heard an interview of the founders, in fact, a couple years back, right? I was just stunned by the kind of clarity these two people had about where they really want to go to. They were very clear that we had to go to this much of revenue, this much of outlets, uh, and then we will go ahead and become public. Just that vision, just that clarity, I think brings a lot of value, a lot of value. And I think this is the most underrated tool which owners actually forget to use today. Number two, marketing means spending money to buy customers. I don't need it for my product as it is very good. Customers would definitely switch to me because I'm good. Now, if this was a scenario, I'm sure marketing as a function would not be needed, right? The basic premise of doing business is to be able to show the world that what product or what service offering you have. And why, to me, this is a critical one, because the distinction between the mindset that you need to see is whether marketing is a cost or marketing is a revenue enabler, right? Once you start seeing it only as a cost, it starts to become extremely constructive. Anytime you make a decision for marketing investment, you think twice because you think that it's optional, right? And especially small businesses, many a times I've also heard the narrative that we can't afford that much, which is fine. You have to look at your cost lines. I'm not denying that. But then you got to get creative. It doesn't mean that because you don't want to spend cost, it will come as a compromise to the number of customers that you get exposed to. Now, take an example of this company. I don't know how many of you have heard this. Yes, madam. Right? Now, this is the second largest company today in India as far as beauty segment is concerned, and more so beauty homes, home beauty services. Right? The number one, of course, is Urban Company. They've been able to build 100 crore company in just a matter of 4 to 5 years. Right? It started by two friends whose wives were once discussing, saying that we really don't like the services that we get as far as salons are concerned. And we would rather want somebody to come to our home and to be able to furnish those services to us. These two people, they continued, they worked on it and they created this. But what is extremely important here is to be able to see the kind of marketing mix that they deployed for themselves, right? You would not have seen a television advertisement for them. But the way they did their marketing was very, very smart, right? They went ahead and did collaborations, which are B2B collaborations. So if you see here, there are corporate wellness campaigns that they ran for different brands. They even did this for I think one of the schools, which is GD Goenka, right? And that's the kind of beauty. And a lot of marketing today is also storytelling. So what is the story that you tell? So all these um, uh, educational stuff which the brands are putting together today is only going to take the customer's confidence much higher, which, whether you're a small brand or a big brand, you definitely need it. In fact, a small brand needs it much, much more than a large brand, right? And the third example, which I also liked a lot, is how do they narrate the stories of the people who work for them, right? Urban Company also does it very well. I think they have followed suit with that. Another very important thing to see is that how they've used their service platform as their power. So for Urban Company, which is a large funded organization, the app rating is 4.3 versus this organization has been able to build their app rating at a 4.5, right? And that becomes a building block to their growth. So when you're looking at your marketing strategy, look at these few questions, right? Are you able to define your target customers in just one liner? If you're not able to, then there's something wrong with your marketing strategy. Whether you have marketing bucks or not, it is not relevant. It is important that where are you putting whatever you have. If you're putting it in the wrong place, it's not going to get you any results. Second, what is the story that you're telling to the customers? Customers don't really buy products, they buy their benefits out of the products. Third, what percentage of your revenue is actually being spent on marketing? Right? If it is too low, it is actually worse than being too high. Right? That means you're just killing down your business day by day yourself. And then, of course, the last one, which I think all of you must already be doing, you definitely need to measure what is the ROAS on your spend, which is your marketing spends. If you do not calculate this number, there is a chance that you might be spending it in the wrong place. Leave apart spending less or spending more. Third, this is what I was talking about earlier. Building inventory is just blocking money. So a lot of people I've interacted with, they tell me that why do I need to build inventory? I would rather take the orders and then I'm going to build the product for them and it'll take 7, 10 days, 14 days, and the customer is ready to wait. And I've talked to the customers, they're okay for that, which I totally, totally disagree with. Now, traditionally, and even now, supply is always the biggest lever and of growth, right? If you do not display the kind of product portfolio that you have or the kind of supply that you carry, you will not be able to create the intent of your own selves in the minds of the customers, right? If the customers see you as sitting on the edge, they will never invest with you, right? Now, what does supply mean? Now, for a traditional business, we know what supply means. So, for a shopkeeper, if the shelves are half filled or half empty, you get a sense. The customers have a radar, right? They'll sense that this doesn't look like a very well stocked shop. I don't think so. I can place my trust here in this shop. But for a service business, it could mean a well staffed team, right? Or it could mean a portfolio of tools that you carry, because all you need to display is the intent with the customers that yes, I am ready to be able to serve the demand that you have for me, which is very, very important. The case example that I really like here is the case of Bira. Right now, it's again a very, very cluttered market, which is the alcohol market. And surprisingly, uh, in just a short period from 2015 to now, Bira has become the second most preferred beer in India. It is much higher in terms of market share. It's 15%. Kingfisher is about 46%. And the third comes as Budweiser, right? Which is phenomenal because it's a new brand. And typically, this category of customers don't like to shift their loyalty from brands. But Bira has been able to do that very well. Something very spectacular that they did in terms of inventory management, because it's a hardcore distribution led business, they were able to create a very lean inventory management system across the entire network channel. And what that gave to them was, and they utilized a lot of real-time data analytics to be able to plan their inventories better. They could do smaller batches in terms of production, hence a higher speed of fulfillment, and a centralized distribution system was put together, right? So all these enablers allowed them to manage their inventory costs and their distribution costs much, much better, and they could pass on that benefit to their distributor network, which actually then led to taking a much larger market share. Today they stand at about 700 crores in terms of the business revenue, which is in about 9 years is a very, very fantastic number. The fourth is about the spend on hiring and technology. I think a lot of small businesses think that this is something which is optional. They think that maybe adding to the team is something they can postpone. They should first use all their own expertise and all their own time. And once that is exhausted, is then when they should think about hiring, which is absolutely the wrong way to look at it, right? Because if you do not start building the team, then what you're doing is somebody else's work, right? And what that does to you is it divides you from taking the right investments in terms of strategy, in terms of talking to the customers, in terms of developing the products, in terms of understanding the broader market trends, market dynamics. You're not supposed to spend time on tactical things as a founder, as a business owner, but much larger. So do not hesitate to hire people. Do not hesitate to add technology which can save time for you. And there are too many tools today which actually help you become more efficient, and time is the most important resource. Now, before I go to the next case study, do you know which salon brand actually has the maximum number of outlets in India? When I started searching on this, I thought this will be one of those Gitanjalis and Lakmes of the world, because these have been there for a long period of time and they have deeper pockets. But I was surprised that it is Naturals, right? They have about 650 outlets across India as compared to 300 for Lakme, right? It was started by this couple, and the primary focus, the way they've driven this, and the success of the business is by driving it through teams, right? They have invested heavily in the training of their teams. They've invested heavily in building relationships with their franchise partners. And what that has given them is a huge impetus to be able to take their journey to a great level today. So they have about 1,200 crores of revenue, and they're still expanding. The market is really, really open right now for this kind of a business. Tier 2, tier 3 cities are penetrated, but very, very less as of now. So just putting the right digital tools, putting the right teams together could be a significant building block for you to take the business to a extremely different level. And then the last, and this is my favorite, is many people think that growth is not possible without funds at all, right? Or capital or funds availability is the most important success factor, right? I'm going to quote a research here. And this research was actually done by a gentleman called Bill Gross. And there is a entire 15, 16 minutes TED talk on this. And there is a link here. I could share the link later with the chat as well. He was somebody who was building a lot of startups, right? It was a venture capitalist fund that he was leading. They had invested in a lot of companies some of them obviously did well, some did not do well. So that made him very curious that what is it that works to build a successful company. And he then started doing this research. He took the sample of all the companies that they themselves had invested into, and he also got data for a lot of companies that were outside their own ecosystem, right? Now these are the five things that he concluded are the strongest drivers of success for a small organization or a startup. The first one being timing. So if you have an idea, if there is a concept, whether the idea is good or not is the third important thing, but the timing of launch is the most important thing. But more importantly, compared to the notion that I was earlier referring to, which is fund being the most important thing, it is actually just 14% contribution to the overall success of the organization. It's not the money that matters as much. It definitely matters, right? I'll be lying if I say that one could do a successful business or build a large growing business without funds, but it is not as important as we think it is, right? A lot of other things, for example, timing, execution, and team, which we were just discussing, the idea itself, the business model, right, which is equally very important, and a lot of factors that we discussed in terms of the marketing systems and the other technology systems, they all sit into your business model. And then last, of course, is the availability of the funds. So there are about eight different elements that typically we look at when we look at organizations for growth, right? And specifically for small businesses. And these eight elements are the first one being the business P&L deep dive, right? Which we started with. I think it's very, very insightful. What comes out of that is a growth action plan, right? Uh, then we start looking at specific dimensions of growth, which is how do we improve sales? How do we optimize marketing? Because a lot of companies, I've seen small businesses burning a lot of cash just on marketing, which means that they don't have the right strategy of marketing in place, which is leading to that amount of burn. Franchise expansion is a speciality that we look at because all the retail businesses in India have a significant room to expand as far as franchise is concerned, right? So that's a very prominent route which a lot of businesses have taken, which we believe is something which can catapult the growth of any small business to being a medium to a large size business. People is a very foundational step. I can't stress enough the importance of how a good, motivated, skilled team could actually be a foundation stone to grow a business. And then last two, which is technology and the focus on customer and listening to the customer and correcting your product and service offering backed on that, right? So these are the eight elements which we typically look at in business growth gymnasium. That's the tool that we look at. And why a growth gymnasium tool is because I have worked with a lot of different tools, and the way we have crafted these eight, I haven't seen any other methodology or tool which is able to capture all these details and work with small businesses to be able to produce the kind of impact in terms of growth. I have personally been working with many businesses where we've seen sales being growing to 2 to 3x in about 3 to 4 months. We've seen order books getting much more spelled out. We've seen costs becoming lesser We've seen people becoming far more happier and productive than what they were, right? So a lot of positive impact. But I think the summary of it, I think the last this is the last slide perhaps, is that the way I see this, and when I talk to small businesses versus when I talk to MNCs, the key difference is that for small businesses, the business is not just an occupation, right? It's much more than that. It's a dream for some. It's a ticket to financial independence, or it could be something that a father or a mother wants to pass it on to their children, right? So it's far more precious, and it really deserves to be successful. And I really feel when some of the gaps that I see which are preventing these organizations to grow are so easily solvable, because somebody has already solved them, somebody has cracked this code. It is just to be adopted from that setting to this business setting, and that is what creates a lot of magic, and that's what Grey Shoots is all about. And if there is a business where you're kind of seeing a few impediments to your growth, I'll be more than happy to hop onto a call and have a discussion. Yeah, I think those were the few things that I wanted to share today. This video is anyways going to be available on YouTube. I will share the link of the recorded video as well, if you need to pass it on or use it later for yourself. Happy to take any questions, any comments. So, Priyanka, one of the things that distinguishes a founder from that of a someone who's doing a job is that a founder is usually that Durga Mata, right? You've got to have those so many hands, and each hand will have a different tool that you're trying to run with. And there will be multiple areas where you will have to act upon. Now, there is a difference between managing an issue and killing an issue. Typically, you will have to keep some of the balls in the air and manage some of the things that you're struggling with. And that's what there is no choice but to do it. But when it comes to completely solving an area, the approach of always going incisive one at a time always helps, right? uh, because it requires deeper problem solving, it requires deeper solutioning, it might require benchmarking with what others are doing in the market, or some knowledge gathering around what the solution could be. But then you kill it, and then you create a plan that in the next 3 months this problem is going to be out of the way as far as this organization is concerned, right? So it's a bit of both that you need to do. But killing the problem will require one problem to go deeper and fixing it, while you're living with 10 others till the time you're able to get to the 10th one. So I think that's how it'll go. Okay, if there are no more questions, then we could call this an end. Thank you so much for joining, and I wish you all the best. Hope to connect with you soon. Take care.